The students' anger centres on this unsealed path which climbs from the student accommodation area towards the main campus. It's designated an official pathway, but those who use it say it more closely resembles a cow track, one they claim presents an unacceptable danger to the hundreds of residential students who walk here daily to reach the main campus.
It is inadequately lit, unsafe, and it is obviously unsealed, as you can see.
The problems came to a head last week when two men brandishing a knife accosted a lone male student on the pathway. The first-year resident of International House asked not to be identified for fear of retribution from his attackers. He escaped unharmed in the skirmish, but he fears the attack could be repeated if the university doesn't act.
They've been advised to do the paths heaps of times before and they haven't done anything, so yes, I blame them for that.
The university has shown that it is completely unwilling to act to what are legitimate concerns. They are willing to act to provide a $5.4 million administration block for themselves. I don't know what they must be thinking up there, that the students simply don't matter.
Students are now advised to only use the pathway in the company of others. In a somewhat symbolic gesture, around 100 students did that today for the benefit of the camera. Until the university responds to their long-standing demands to improve the security of the pathway, they can only contemplate the university motto, "I look ahead." Leslie Robinson for NBN News.
The Reverend Dorothy McMahon from Sydney's Pitt Street Uniting Church spoke of the recent 2-year torment from members of National Action, a neo-Nazi group who'd made repeated threats and violent demonstrations to her and her church members. She said her stand against racial discrimination had enraged the group, who had 12 of their members subsequently convicted. But she said the experience had fostered a unity within the church and the community, giving inner strength, purpose and a sense of freedom. A similar situation could arise out of women's battles for equality in the church, she said.
I think this diocese is working quite hard on the issue anyway, but obviously it's striking problems with other dioceses, particularly Sydney.
She warned that discrimination is turning women away from religions that refuse to recognise their equality.
If you put women in place as priests, then it's clear that every single ministry in the church is open to women. And I think young women today, and women who are a little older too for that matter, will not really be satisfied with anything less, because they find accessibility in ordinary life outside the church in every field. And for the church to be the last bastion against that sort of participation by women is really not acceptable any longer.
But once women are accepted, they will bring a whole new perspective to the church, she said.
Unlike the full-time TRG, SWOS officers are drawn from regular police for special duties. They undergo a training program in addition to the normal requirements of day-to-day police work. As the name implies, their training is with special weapons, high-powered rifles and shotguns, and in special operations. It's a backup role Police Superintendent Russ Cook says the rest of the force can't do without.
If they run into problems with seizures and that type of problem, well, they are a trained group that come and give assistance to them.
It's estimated that about 20 local police are SWOS officers. They've been involved in dozens of operations each year since they were introduced to the Newcastle Patrol in the early 70s. It's understood that blood has only been spilt once in that time, when an officer was wounded during a training exercise. Although SWOS is trained to perform the same operations as the Tactical Response Group, senior police say SWOS would be far more likely to negotiate a resolution, even if it took days. There are exceptions. In July 1988, SWOS officers raided this address in Mayfield, acting on a tip-off that notorious prison escapee Raymond Denning was there. The information was wrong, the resident, an elderly woman. On other occasions, the operations have gone off without a hitch, like these raids in August '89 on alleged drug dealers at Pelican, Wickham and other suburbs. Police made 12 arrests in connection with the raids. The matter is still before the courts. Superintendent Cook says whatever the outcome of government inquiries, police will always need a specially trained unit for hazardous operations.
There's always dangerous people in the community, and one, the community's got to be protected against them, and two, our people have got to have backup and protection when they go into dangerous situations.
It all seems black and white, but when members of the Wamberal Action Group consider plans for the development of their beloved beachfront, they see red. They're angry about an application to rezone this strip of residential and council-owned land. If approved, it would leave the way open for a planned 5-storey, 44-unit resort.
The park here is public reserve. We would have thought that as soon as they received the application, they would have given it a reasonable amount of consideration and then rejected it out of hand, in which case the development could not go ahead.
It's not the first time in recent years Gosford City Council has come under fire from residents. In early 1987, the controversial Peppers on Sea proposal caused a wave of protest. On that occasion, the developers won and the resort was built. No one from Gosford City Council's planning department was available to speak to our cameras today. A spokesman did, however, say that to win ultimate approval, the rezoning application would have to win the support of council and planning authorities a total of 4 times. If that does happen, the council will find itself with a real fight on its hands.
As a result of our meeting on Sunday, we've tapped an enormous bank of experts in this area, including some of the greatest legal brains, I would think, in New South Wales. We've also had considerable offers of finance, and we don't see any obstacles in our way, and we're sure that we'll win if we take it to court.
Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.
Mayfield residents feel so strongly against the plan, which is yet to go before Newcastle City Council, that already 2,500 signatures have been collected. A public meeting is planned next month. However, Cleanaway has already mounted a campaign to win over the community with a series of briefings. This afternoon, representatives of Cleanaway met members of Mayfield West Public School P&C Association, but we were refused permission to film that meeting. And Cleanaway representatives also refused to speak to us on camera, although they said out of 3 possible sites, Mayfield West was preferred. They said the site next to a magnesium plant off Turl Street Bridge is within 600 metres of houses. And they said the plan is to have 3 treatment processes there, including an incinerator. Explanatory letters from the company have been circulated to residents saying that an environmental impact statement is expected in August, with construction beginning in December and the plant fully operational in early 1992. But residents say they are prepared to fight.
It's not that we don't feel that perhaps a waste treatment plant isn't necessary, but not within 10 kilometres of any residence. There's enough literature on toxic waste plants to make everyone fearful of having one in the area. It's also all these trucks with chemicals that are going to be coming through all the suburbs. And the way they travel, there could be a disaster, and there's been plenty in Sydney recently.
The full board of the NJC sat down this morning to discuss the dilemma facing the club. Their problem, the collapse of Reed Investments Proprietary Limited, Reed Finance Proprietary Limited and Bradan Development Proprietary Limited, all owned and directed by NJC Secretary-Manager Terry Smith. 2 hours later, the board emerged with a statement revealing Mr Smith had sought and received a leave of absence for 1 month while he attempts to sort out his business affairs. In the meantime, the club will be operated by the present staff under the supervision of Chairman Ross McGinn. There was no further statement from Mr Smith or any of the board members. The provisional liquidator for the three companies has revealed a letter will be sent out within a fortnight to all investors. It's expected they will receive a return of no more than 10% of their investments. Since the Rock and Robin disappeared nearly 2 weeks ago, the families of the four men have remained convinced they're alive. But their optimism is not shared by the federal government. It called off the search after 3 days. With help from the public, the families have funded their own private search. To date, they have spent nearly $150,000 and have received almost $80,000 in donations. But with limited resources, the families' efforts have been unsuccessful. Yesterday they met directors of the Federal Sea Safety Centre to present new evidence which they hoped would see a resumption of the search. But they say the meeting was a farce from the beginning.
Very disappointed and let down. We believe it was a total sham. We don't believe they came here to listen to an even-sided argument at all. They were sent by the Minister, we believe, to placate the families and possibly just give a bit of sympathy, and to push the official line again that they weren't going to reopen the search.
According to the families, yesterday was the first time the Sea Safety Centre had seen these pictures taken by the RAAF that Friday night and had received only extracts from the Air Force mission reports. The families have studied those reports and talked to the men involved in the search. They say major discrepancies exist between what the RAAF saw and did and what the Sea Safety Centre knew when it decided to call off the search.
I think if you're a bank manager or accountant, I think they'd be sacked because you don't make a decision that affects people's lives unless you see all the facts at hand. And there were a lot of things that they had no idea or they'd misinterpreted, we believe, because they didn't know about them or didn't really want to know about them.
The families say the decision to abandon the search was based on misinformation. In an interview earlier this week, Minister for Shipping Bob Collins gave his reason.
Subsequent search revealed the raft on which the people had been seen to be, on the second occasion, thrown out and climbed back on empty. And the other raft hasn't been found at all. But that missing life raft, which was the one without a canopy, was in fact destroyed by the sea. Now, no trace of that raft has been found either by the official search or by the unofficial search since.
But both the Air Force and Sea Safety admit there is no evidence to suggest the men were ever in that raft. The families firmly believe the men are still out there in the second raft. They plan to continue their own private search for at least a month and say they're also seeking advice on possible legal action against the Federal Sea Safety Centre. Jodie McKay for Newsnight. The 11-metre yacht Yak was high on flat rock this morning as an extensive air and sea search was underway for Margaret Anton. She'd been steering the yacht in darkness when friend and fellow yachtsman Jeffrey Mills offered to give her a break, but she refused.
And Margaret said, "No, it's such pleasant sailing, leave me here. It's very pleasant sailing at the moment."
But at 6 o'clock the yacht rammed the reef and lost its keel, tossing the elderly woman onto the rocks.
I can't describe it. One of absolute horror. I just can't begin to believe.
With their emergency position indicator activated and flares fired, the men clambered onto the reef after securing their stricken yacht. They were picked up a short time later by the SES helicopter. Still, hope hadn't faded for their companion, wearing a life jacket and reputedly a strong swimmer. But early this afternoon, Margaret Anton's body was found 3 kilometres north of where she disappeared. The yak, built for its strength and durability, was still floundering on the rocks today.
It's been billed as the grudge match of the season, but with the Kings on the borderline of the final 6 and the Falcons firmly entrenched at the bottom of the ladder, the Harbour City boys will have to start favourites. These two teams have met on 24 previous occasions, and the Falcons hold the balance of power 14-10. They have already met once this year, and it was a comprehensive 30-point win for the Kings. Fielding former Falcons Ian Rebillard and Bob Turner, the only real worry for the Kings, it would seem, is trying to cover guard Steve Carfina, who was out with a leg injury, and a suspect Mark Ridlin. Not so, says coach Bob Turner. Newcastle at home are tough, and it was this match last year that proved costly to the Kings.
Last year in the second or third round, the last round of the season, we were headed for the playoffs and Newcastle knocked us off, so there's no question that Newcastle always fires up to play us.
In the Falcons' favour is the improved scoring capabilities of Greg Lazard and Peter Hill, who was in super touch against the Gold Coast last week. At the stadium, anything is possible, and many pundits are tipping a Falcons victory.
Galileo would have been proud of them, the students from Maitland Public School putting their minds to work for the betterment of humankind. A brilliant new mousetrap, simple but very effective.
Well, this is the mouse killer. You fill it up to water about there and put pepper and chilli in it, and then when you put the mouse, you open this lid, put the mouse in it, it just dies and suffocates.
Or the perfect receptacle for those too ill to get out of bed. More than 200 inventions are on display, all the genius of young minds ranging from 5 to 11 years old. For the leisure market, one youngster decided to put an engine on the back of a surfboard. Perfect for those flat days down at the beach. The display will continue for a week.
Mixed night for Lakes United in their 24-8 thrashing of Toronto at Carl Oval last evening. Former Newcastle Knights player Brian Quinton had a big game in attack and showed his experience in scoring a great individual try in the first half, and was partly responsible for another, with the ball being picked up by Chris Prigg and he barged his way over for a 4-pointer. On the downside was the sending off of former Knights strongman Mike McKinnon for an alleged use of the forearm to the head of an opponent, on this occasion Scorpions winger Jason Edwards. But Lakes had the last laugh and scored a super try from flank to flank, with Quinton then Walsh handling before the ball went out to the fridge James Pickering, onto David Grant, and he scored wide out. At National Park netball courts, Newcastle BHP put up a brave showing against one of the hottest teams in the State League, Randwick. Boasting 4 current Australian players and 1 English international, Randwick led by 11 at half-time, 31-20, and it looked as though it was going to be a cakewalk for the visitors. But Newcastle BHP stuck to their guns and came right back into the match. In the end, the experience of Randwick paid off, and they ran out the winners by 9, 56-47. And for the avid golfer, how about a place where you don't have to worry about the water? The bugbear of so many little ball wallopers has been eradicated with a new driving range at Hungerford Hill Winery in the Hunter Valley. Dennis and Judy Barrow have launched the only aqua golf range in Australia where you don't lose your ball, it floats. Along with improving your game, a chance to win prizes is an added incentive. A full report in Sports Centre Sunday next week. Coach Ken Cole made a surprise choice in starting Grant Kruger, but he didn't let his coach down. For the Sydney Kings, Damien Keogh looked ominous. James Bully had a blinder in the first half, hitting 26 points. But Sydney shooters kept them in touch. Michael Johnson got a hot hand in the second half with 3-point bombs. And Greg Lazard pulled off the reject of the season. But it was to no avail as the Kings' teamwork was superb.
In effect, it was a changing of the guard at RAAF base Williamtown this morning. After just over 2 years as chief of the RAAF's Tactical Fighter Group, Air Commodore Trevor Richardson signed over his command to take up a new role behind a desk at Air Headquarters at Glenbrook in the Blue Mountains. It was the end of a 29-year love affair with fighter flying, an affair the Air Commodore had never been able to end, even when he took over the responsibility of forces at Williamtown, Darwin, Tyndall, Amberley and Perth.
My command position allowed me to fly the Hornet, which I've enjoyed over the last 4 years, and of course it's quite sad not to be able to do that anymore.
So it was with a touch of nostalgia that the former chief paid one last visit to the number 77 Squadron Hornet that flies with his name, accompanied by the man who has filled his shoes. Air Commodore Brian Weston too has a wealth of experience in the skies, but that didn't stop him spending the past 5 months on an intensive Hornet training course at Williamtown in a bid to ensure he's in touch with the capabilities of his flying force.
It's important to have a very good background in fighter flying because that's the whole purpose of the group. We are the Tactical Fighter Group.
Air Commodore Weston steps into the commanding role just as Australia's flying fighting forces reached its peak. Only last month the RAAF took control of the nation's last Hornet, and with the ranks now at full strength, the new commander believes it's time to begin grooming our fighting forces to become the elite of the world.
We've got all our aircraft up to strengthen the squadrons. We've completed the works at Williamtown, some small projects still outstanding, and we're now building up our pilot experience after losing quite a few pilots 1 or 2 years ago. So I'd see the next 2 years as a period of building on what's here and consolidating.
Leafing through a wad of conference notes in his Newcastle office today, it was obvious Dr. David Sutherland's mind was still in San Francisco. So too was his heart, which goes out to the protesters who threatened to ruin the meeting he travelled thousands of kilometres to attend.
These people have a real problem. They say, don't tell me about drug trials that last 2 years because in 2 years I'll be dead. Don't tell me that the government takes time to analyse the results because I'm dying. And, you'd be unreasonable not to concede that they've got a point.
Dr. Sutherland was also quick to hose down reports of a so-called AIDS vaccine. He says such a breakthrough is still little more than a distant hope at this stage.
The problem is that there's a confusion in the terms. The vaccine, the prevention to stop people getting the disease is at least 10 years away. What people are talking about is a killed virus changed chemically. Now that's to inject into people who already have the disease to try and boost their immunity.
Bad news for the 1,600 people suspected to be suffering from the disease in the Hunter alone. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.